Good morning, everybody. Significantly, the meeting this year has given voice to Africa right from the first meeting. Sunday's first big meeting was, in fact, dedicated to Africa, with Minister Frattini, with the Vice Prime Minister of Kenya, and then there was the representative of Sierra Leone, and many other representatives. Talking about Africa, we realize that the situation there is really dramatic. A situation that we from the West and from Italy can't really understand. There are 300 million people, in fact, who risk starvation every day. That this figure has gone up 12% this year compared to last year, and that in the last 40 years, before enormous growth in some parts of the world and also in our country, nonetheless, the growth in Africa has been 0.2% per year. In other words, it's risible compared to the population of Africa. Almost 1 billion people, more than 60%, don't have electricity. Youth unemployment in certain countries is still as much as 60% and probably growing. The number of wars, conflicts, coup d'etat, as we will hear today, is enormous, incomparable in any other country. In this period, political events, institution events that are new have come about. And it might be cynical to think that the new programmed aid will, by and large, only have the limited effect that they have had in past decades. But we don't want to think in this way. We don't want to think that the new period of Africa will be like the last one. We want to be hopeful. The recent journey of the Pope and the G8 are testimony to the resolve on the part of the institutions of the world to forge ahead, and we want to believe in them. But when we look at today's meeting on Africa, we see that nonetheless there are experiences going on which are prophetic and are a source of hope. Even if, as we will see, they are part and part of a context which have become more and more dramatic, these contexts, and we will hear about them. These testimonies are, as I say, nonetheless, highly positive signs today, and I think that they must be taken on board by institutions. These are the people who are educating the African people. And it's only with educated people, people who learn about fraternity, brotherhood, work. It's only in this way will we, in fact, trigger a positive context and situation. Without further ado, we have two exceptional testimonials today. On my right, we have Msgr Cesare Matsolari, who is from Brescia originally.
Con alle spalle una lunga esperienza.
He has long experience in the United States. He went to the super first world before he was ordained a priest, and before he went to South Sudan, and then Southern Sudan in 1981, almost 30 years ago, where he has been working in this extraordinary, dramatic situation. He was made bishop by John Paul II on the 6th of January 1909, and at Rumbek, this is where he lived in the third largest city of Sudan, and he is a prime player in the religious but also in the civic life of the city. And then on the other side, we have Sister Caterina Dolci. She is from Bergamo, and coming here, we said that these two were, in fact, cousins in their missionary work, but certainly rivals as regards football teams. She was a member of C&L. She became a sister of the Bambin Gesù congregation, and she was a follower of Barre, and she became a sister, a nun, in 85. She went to Nigeria and has been there for 25 years, living in the north of Nigeria. She now lives in the village of Kona, a few miles from Karaba, which is the capital of the northeast province, Nigeria. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Msgr Matsolari first, and then Sister Dolci. After these presentations, in a smaller room, we can continue this meeting with the questions and answers until lunchtime. So thank you, and I now give the floor to Msgr Matsolari.
Vi saluto.
I greet you on behalf of Christ and on behalf of the people of Sudan, a people that John Paul II has called a people that have suffered too much and too long, and still today are on the Calvary, on their way to real peace and reconciliation. And with my heart, I therefore greet you on behalf of the people of Sudan. The subject of my presentation is the slow but sure journey to reconciliation in Sudan. So I'm going to talk about Sudan, especially in southern Sudan, and I'm going to describe two periods of war. The Deliania I war, which went from 1964 to 1972, and the second war, 11 years later, the Civil War, which went from 1983 to 2005. The subject that I have chosen fits well with the subject that all the bishops in Africa will come together to meet, to talk about in Rome in the Second African Synod. And the theme will be peace, justice, and reconciliation. So we fit very well and go along with the spirit of the Church in this. What I would like to underline especially is the presence in the field of reconciliation, the presence of the Church that has always been attentive to the sufferings of peoples. But with me, in the front line, as it were, I have a commissioner for my region of Sudan, Denker Gore, and who, after this presentation, after the two presentations, in fact, will also be part of a roundtable discussion where you can ask questions of him, political questions, and also, if you like, more civil questions, civilian questions. Now, reconciliation is being developed in a situation of complete rupture and division between the oppressors on the one hand and the victims and those who are oppressed on the other. Reconciliation is always conducted through the support and backing of God, God of misery, that gives us the grace of being able to pardon. But the real players of reconciliation are the oppressed, not the oppressors, because the oppressed, accepting their suffering and the letting of blood, accepting the cross, can find themselves once again and find the strength to leave behind them hate and vendetta, and can become therefore a new person, new people, and can kill in themselves the grip of hostility. It's a very long process, dear brothers and sisters. It's a hard, difficult path to go along, but it leads to peace and reconciliation and reconstruction, both of the individual and society. The real model of reconciliation is Christ, as is described by St. Paul in the letter to the Ephesians. Christ himself became a victim. He became the oppressed one. He took upon himself our own sins, all our evils, on his body, within his soul, within his mind. And within his body, therefore, he healed this hostility and healed this rupture amongst ourselves and with God, creating within himself a new creature. And in this way, he offered to those who wish, with his grace, the gift of reconciliation and peace. The third consideration on reconciliation is that Christ calls each and every Christian to be a reconciliation ambassador. In the letter to the Corinthians of St. Paul, St. Paul says, God gave us the ministry of reconciliation, entrusting upon us the work of reunification, and hence we are ambassadors of reconciliation for Christ. The African continent is struggling towards this goal of reconciliation, and in the encyclical letter of Pope Benedict, Charity and Truth, there is an appeal, a heartfelt appeal to the whole world to extend daily love to the true ambassadors of reconciliation in a society that is still too split and sintered. I've been here at the meeting for 3 days, and I'm fully aware that there are many reconciliation ambassadors here at the meeting. The atmosphere that prevails in this meeting is one of cordiality. It's a place where we can experiment with our ability to renew that which is most humane and most divine in each and every one of us here at this meeting. We have this possibility. I thank God for allowing me to discover here in Rimini a haven of true solidarity. Now I'd like to describe some of the reconciliation ambassadors that we have in Sudan. And I'd like to start with a very tragic moment in the missionary life of southern Sudan. In 1964, the Khartoum government established that our evangelization work had been concluded or was concluded, and the government ordered 300 missioners, fathers, sisters and nuns to be transported and evicted by plane from Sudan. This was a violent moment of separation. 300 evangelizers, faithful people who had just been initiated to the faith, they were left behind, and many of them, after the departure of the missionaries, many of them were killed. Many of the missionaries afterwards went to Rome on a pilgrimage and then to Palestine to offer to the Lord a reparation for all the atrocities that they had suffered and which the Christians had paid with their own blood, even more than they had. They accepted the complete refusal, and they could no longer go back to Sudan. And this inhuman refusal was accepted by them, however, and they accepted to go to other places of the world as missionaries. But again, always looking towards their Sudan that they knew was bleeding in the violence and that was perpetrated and the poverty that was suffered. A very small number of local clerics remained, however, and here the story gets even more tragic. The government challenged these local priests and the local bishops, saying to them that they should renounce the Church of the Vatican and become part of a national church. As one, they resisted. They remained faithful to the Church of Rome. But, however, 3 of them were victims of this choice in faith. The first martyr was the great Father Arcangelo Ali, who was the Vicar General of Rumbek, and the second was Father Santurnino Lugure. He had been the Vicar General of the Diocese of Rumbek and then a member of the Parliament in Khartoum. And the third was somebody from Congo, a generous, a good person, Father Barnaba Deng. He was an Undenka Sudanese. And here we really see the suffering of the local church. And together with them, many Christians were also killed. At Rumbek, we have an enormous grave where many Christians are buried. They were both lay people and catechists. They were killed, and on this grave, on the grave of Cesare Matsolari, we are going to build a monument to the martyrs of Sudan. But as always happens in the history of the Church, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of new Christians. The 2 results of this martyrdom, which was slow and violent, slow for the missionaries that were sent away and bloody and violent for those who were killed. But after 11 years, this led to the peace treaty of Addis Ababa and therefore a lease of new life for Sudan. But the best thing in the history of the Church was that in 1975, in other words, 12 years afterwards, the missionaries were allowed to return. The Church of South Sudan seemed dead. But with the return of the missionaries, we found the heroism of the catechists who, without any resources, in enormous poverty, had nonetheless continued to keep alive their Christian community and keep the community in the faith. Therefore, our missionaries went back without knowing all the tragedy that had happened, but they gleaned the fruits of what had taken place in the meantime. We went in the 1980s and we harvested the fruits from these seeds of disaster. And it's a community and evangelization that are continuing to grow. Something that seemed on its deathbed has now sprung alive again. But 12 years after the Addis Ababa Treaty, a new war was started, the 1983 outbreak of war. And this started, in the south, However, when it started, we thought we were free. We had freedom to evangelize, to set up schools, something we were doing. We had a great leader who, too, was sacrificed as a hero for peace, the great commander, John Garan de Mabio, who was also very willing for the church to progress in the area. But as with any guerrilla group, the soldiers were disbanded and lacked discipline, and they became violent. And the poor church and the civilians, unfortunately, soon became victim of their violence and their evil deeds, and many people were killed. So we were no longer in a regime of liberation. We too fell under the cloak of the evil deeds of indisciplined soldiers. In 1980s, 1990s, many of our missionaries were taken as hostages, prisoners. We have 3 sisters who for 12 days were kept prisoner in the forest. Then they were released. We had a Jesuit, Father Salvatore, and another Jesuits who were kept also prisoner. Father Cefalo, Father Pederino, they too were taken away, and they were made to walk from Sudan to Ethiopia for 102 days. And then a Salesian father, Father James, who for 18 months worked as an evangelizer among the liberation soldiers, and then for the sake of his mother, who was very old, they let him go. In all this time, the church behaved as the oppressed victim, as Christ. They kept silent. They did not make any international appeals. They suffered with those who were kept prisoner until their release, so as not to create problems for the people and to encourage their peaceful release. But we let the authorities of Sudan know, the People's Liberation Army, that this was the moment to come together and to make an alliance. We did this at Kajiko near Ye, and in this treaty that was drawn up, we were able to set up a committee for religious affairs that allowed us to deal among the churches and with the churches about all our difficulties with the liberation movement, and to instill a more respectful treatment on behalf of the soldiers. However, the tragedy didn't stop there. At a certain point, in 1991, the liberation movement was disbanded. It fell apart and separated into 2 separate camps. One group assembled near Nasir and became the Sudan People's Liberation Army United, or United Army, under 3 leaders, whereas John Garan remained in the south, in Turid, calling himself the SPLA-SPLM, the Sudan's People Liberation Army, and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. But military strife was started, and that meant a war in south of Sudan between the 2 groups, the liberation groups. So what did the churches do then? In the name of our spirit of reconciliation, we started a to and fro of meetings at Nasir and then at Turid, in the hope of being able to bring these 2 groups together and bring them to peace. We already had the war from Khartoum, but we didn't succeed. We had to leave the Nasir party and let them unite with the party of Khartoum into what was called peace within. But They stayed in Khartoum only for 3 years, and then they went back to the south to come together again to talk about peace and to bring about a peace treaty. I give you this chronological account that you perhaps don't know to indicate to you how the Church did all it could in all the moments when the people suffered to try and bring peace to the people. And therefore, with these two factions that were fighting each other, of course, the people suffered. And we had meeting after meeting. One alliance after the other was clinched to try and bring peace. The first we did in 1998 at Obichokyo, which is the frontier between Kenya and Sudan. The second we did in my diocese, Yochi, and this lasted 7 years. And the people were able to live peacefully and not fight. And the third alliance was clinched in Nasir and then in Churid to try yet again to bring harmony among these people. Unfortunately, the violence was abated, especially to join together and to be able to face the peace treaty. So at this point, we came to 2003. When we understood that with international help we could finally start really to bring about peace with the North. At this point, the bishops started their journey. They brought together all the African countries. They came to Europe. They went to the U.S. To give conferences, episcopal conferences. They went to all the embassies to talk about peace. All the embassies, obviously, that accepted their presence. And in 2005, finally, in January, we finally signed a peace treaty. And I was driven by faith, driven by a sense of reconciliation, driven by 28 years in Sudan. Felt really that, yes, peace was obtained through diplomatic channels with political canvassing. But looking at it from a point of view of God, peace and the giver of peace for us bishops, that peace that was brought about in Sudan was propitiated by the mothers and all the survivors of war who accepted their suffering and who offered their suffering to God and who received from the God of mercy the gift of peace. They offered in 22 years of war, husbands, sons, young people, babies. They saw their families destroyed before their very eyes. And God has given them the gift of peace, the mercy of peace, to put aside this Holocaust. And they said unto God, have pity upon us. Sisters and brothers, the history of the church and religion is in the hands of God. It is only being humble and holding out our hands to God that we will be able to receive his blessing and his peace. War is now finished. I wish I could say that all the problems were ended. But unfortunately, we have a lot of violence within us after 22 years of war. And therefore, the conflicts continue, unfortunately. But the Church does not desist. In 2006, we had the Bantus who were fighting against the Luo, the Adzande against the Denkas. They destroyed homes, they took away cattle, they even destroyed churches. The church had 2 weeks of meetings in Ambu in the west and then at Rumbek, and we clinched an alliance, a pact of alliance, and this helped for some time. When I was in Italy in May, further conflicts took place. The church took a hand again, and in June this year, another alliance was established to bring together these tribes that continue to fight one another. What has the church done to achieve reconciliation when this was possible? Well, first of all, the bishops continually wrote letters to the Christians to encourage them to extend mercy and pardon their enemies. They wrote directly to the establishment, to the rulers, and open letters. But in all their letters, the bishop gave inspiration to the people of Sudan, to Christians, to have understanding and to fully understand that it's only through pardon and justice and the possibility of suffering, it's only in this way that we will obtain the mercy of God. So revenge and hate have to be set aside. At the same time, the bishops kept up their presence, a very clear presence among the peoples over 22 years of war, and very often they went around the world as beggars almost, asking for help, and they went back to their poor Sudan to distribute food so that their people did not starve to death. What is the situation in South Sudan today? Well, you all know that Darfur exists. You all know of Darfur, and for many of us, the Sudan is Darfur, but Darfur is only a part of Sudan where there is the greatest amount of inhuman acts which are committed, where the terrible things happen every day. You know that our head of state is, in fact, has been charged with crimes against humanity, the head of the state there. But nonetheless, apart from Darfur, there are many conflicts still ongoing in Sudan. Even when I'm here, I, of course, am still in contact with Sudan, and I'm continuously told that the government continues to make plans and calls the church to help in the work of reconciliation. We are seriously concerned. The Council of Churches met in Khartoum in the last 10 days, in fact. And first of all, it extended an appeal to all Christians of the world. The Council says it is with the concern for the people of God in Sudan. The union of churches today is dedicating itself to allowing people, getting people of God to live with more commitment and to encourage them to elect a reliable government that will promote the spirit of unity and will act with the people and for the good of the people. In other words, there is an appeal to live faith, a dependency on God, and to do so in complete trust, abandoning themselves to God, God who can give peace. And then the Conference of Churches also says those who developed the peace treaty, and also to those in the Horn of Africa, the countries of the Horn of Africa, and the international community at large. As I say, an appeal is made to come to the aid of Sudan, because without intervention on their part, Sudan might well fall apart. Yesterday, sisters and brothers, I spent some of my day with the politicians who have come here to Rimini, and we talked to them about the alarm that all the churches of Sudan feel most acutely. And we asked that there be an intervention on the part of the meeting of Rimini to protect peace in Sudan. We say so because we are severely concerned. The rearmament continues. We are terrified that the solution to our conflicts will become an even greater conflict. I put this and lay this open to your hearts for you to pray that peace will be brought to Sudan. I have here a commissioner who later will be able to illustrate more in depth the work we are doing to bring about reconciliation. But now, I would like to say a few things that we have prepared before this meeting and that we have been developing here in the last few days while we've been at Rimini. The bishops have done much and have made many appeals. And the response has been very heartwarming, especially from Italy. And I would like to underline a few of the points in which the Rimini friends can help us to rebuild the soul as well as the facilities and infrastructure of Sudan. First of all, the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart has for some years been proposing and giving a master for African students, Sudanese, and a Sudanese priest has already been on this master's course. And also they came to Kenya and they set up a branch at the University of Tangaza in Kenya to be able to train many more African students. Now, we applaud these courageous endeavors, this way of practically building tomorrow's African leaders. And we ask and urge that this initiative be continued as a key educational endeavor. A similar thing is going on. The Sudan bishops have started a Catholic university in Juba. This is the only Catholic university of Sudan. And they already have contacts with friends in Rimini. They have asked for instruments, for facilities that, in fact, have already been sent. Hopefully this will continue to help this new university flourish. We also have a high school in Chuibet in the county of the commissioner who is here with us, and later he will be able to illustrate what is being done. And this trains teachers and professors. We have more than 700 teachers who have not really received proper training because they have to be trained, and this will ensure a better education. And you can get more information on this and material on this. And certainly we appeal for help in the training of teachers and the young people. This, of course, will be of the essence for us. There's also a trade school, vocational school, that the friends of Rimini actually came to see in Sudan. It's a trade school which is dedicated to the first Sudanese bishop, Sunil Kud. And it's unique of its kind, and it trains masons, carpenters, and also it does domestic science for women. It trains women in social work and so on. We present these things to you. And here again, this is an open door for you, the Friends of Rimini, to help develop Sudan, which is probably one of the most underdeveloped countries in the world. The various parts of Sudan are also some of the most unknown countries in the world, and we want to find somebody to write the history of Sudan, for it to be written and therefore broadcast, because it's only understanding the glory, the difficulty, the suffering of these people. It's only in this way that there will be knowledge disseminated, and this will help a wider solidarity, which will be forthcoming once one knows their history. The friends who came to Sudan saw also the enormous resources that our country has, the great agricultural development possibilities that there are, the forests that there are, the rivers that there are, which have not been exploited for the good of the people. So our doors are open. Come and see and help us to allow this country to have some well-being. The last things I'd like to say are these. The bishops in all the dioceses have set up a radio transmission point for their flock. And this is an enormous help. And here, too, the Friends of Rimini have given their contribution, and they have expressed their will to help us further. Our radio, our diocese radio, is founded on human and spiritual values, and it's rooted in a sense of justice and peace. Now, we can't meet everyone, but with the broadcasting service, this will help us, and the friends that we have met here will help us to develop these short and programs, especially teaching people how to vote in the referendum, what to do in elections, what can be done to allow people to ensure that their choices be respected. This will be an instrument to educate and to give value to everything that is being set up to give Sudan a future. My last point comes from the deepest corner of my heart. I made an appeal yesterday for lay men and women consecrated called Memores Domini from the movement created by Don Luigi Giussani. I made an appeal to them for the people of Sudan, that they come to Sudan and they give us a hand to set up our communities, to give us a hand to allow the church to really become rooted. And I hope that this appeal to you from the bottom of my heart. The bishops, as I said before, went around the world asking for people to help us maintain the peace, and you responded to this, and we are grateful to Italy. Italy was one of the three important major councillors with Norway, with the European Union, and with the UK representative. We Sudan bishops, we said, have implored your help throughout the world. Our global appeal expresses our profound conviction that peace will not come to Sudan until all people of goodwill put their hand to the plow together with us to drive the furrow in which we can lay the seed of reconciliation and a just peace. I close with a prayer to the Madonna and to Christ, who is our peace. May God give us a heart that is willing to listen to the heart of those who are oppressed and those who are marginalized, wherever they are in the world. And then only in that way will we be on the slow but sure path to reconciliation. Thank you. And I bless you all in the name of Christ and in the name of the whole of all the people of Sudan.
Grazie. Cedo la parola immediatamente a Suor Caterina.
Thank you very much. And now the floor to Sister Caterina Dolci. Thank you very much to the organizers of this meeting and those that invited me here. My story is a simple one. I've been in Nigeria for 24 years, and I have seen very nice things happen there in spite of the difficulties of that country. That's why I still have hope for the future of this country. I'm going to tell you about very simple and small things. Let me first tell you why I reached Nigeria. It all began with an encounter when I was a student in Bergamo, in Italy. I had difficulties understanding my faith. I could not understand the relationship between my life and my faith. Looking around me, I had the impression that those who lived in faith were not happy enough. So I was wondering whether Christ was really useful to man's life. At some point, I met some friends from Communion and Liberation. I was invited to go on holiday with them in Liguria, in Italy. I found people that were joyful. They were full of life. And I discovered that inside these friends, I could see the live presence of Jesus Christ. And I said to myself, I will never leave this. I eventually said, I finally discovered who Jesus Christ is. I always heard that one had to discover Jesus Christ, but I couldn't understand where to look for him. But by meeting those people, I found Jesus Christ. And then I also discovered my vocation to devote my life to God. And meeting with my congregation, the Sisters of Baby Jesus, I was attracted by them because this small group of sisters, I saw them very simple. I saw that they were very simple with a great missionary spirit. They were very free at the same time. So I said to myself, this is really the place where I want to spend my life and devote myself to the Lord. And then I went to the south of Italy, to Calabria, where I had a number of very good experiences with young people. Once, while having a meeting with these young people, I read in Littere Communionis about the experience of some people in Uganda. I was struck by this. I said to myself, if the movement is also there in Uganda, then also Africans have the same heart that we have. They also look for happiness. It was a confirmation for me, and this struck me a lot. Sometime later, my congregation opened a community in the north of Nigeria. They were looking for people who were ready to go there. And I said to myself, well, I can certainly go there and live the same life that I'm living here. So I left. I've been in Nigeria for 24 years. I live in a village which is called Kona. in the state of Taraba. It is one of the states of Nigeria. Nigeria has 36 states altogether. Nigeria is a huge country. It has 150 million inhabitants. It is 3 times as large as Italy, and it is known for many problems and difficulties that it experiences. We have the problem of the Niger Delta. We have the problem of fundamentalism in the north of Nigeria. You have human trafficking. It's also well known because of corruption, which is spread a bit everywhere. These are real problems that we encounter on a daily basis in this country and are difficult to solve. Nevertheless, in Nigeria, there are also some positive examples. There are many people who encounter Christ and live a good life in hope. I have always felt that I could make a contribution to giving these people more hope. Let me tell you about some experiences that I had in Jalingo, a city next to the village where I live. There is a prison where prisoners live in a big room containing 100 of them. The temperature is always above 40 degrees C. They have little water available. They experience great difficulties. I went there and said, you know, my presence wants to be, or intends to be, a small sign that the Lord has not left these people behind. I've seen many people come out of their terrible situation because they had met us. And we became friends. The bishop of our diocese appealed to the whole of the diocese in order to build a cathedral. It was a new diocese, and I informed the prisoners as well. The bishop was supposed to go to the jail a few weeks later to celebrate the Mass, the service. He said during this Mass that everybody had to make a contribution and contribute 1 brick to build the cathedral. These prisoners offered money to the bishop to buy 10 bricks for building the cathedral. I was very struck, and the bishop was also very struck, but I asked the prisoners, how could you find that money? And they told me, sister, no problem. I said, how did you get that money? They told me, well, these days we took pieces of meat from the soups that we received and sold this meat to the jailers. And they paid for this meat. That's why we collected the money. The bishop and everybody around them loved them very much. I live in a village called Kona, as I told you. It's a typical African village. There are huts made of mud and straw. There's no power supply. The roads are not asphalted, and there's little water during the dry season, or the wells are dry. So we actually struggle for survival. When I went to this village 20 years ago, I was really accepted by the people from the village as a friend. I visited the village because of a celebration, and I was accepted as a friend. I said to myself, this is a sign. I have to stay, to continue staying with these people. There were many prejudices about this village. They told me, sister, don't go there. They won't follow you. They're stubborn, etc. But my experience, my feelings were different. And I said to myself, I must trust my feelings. The local traditions were still very live, polygamy and many additional traditions. People had many fears. I started meeting women to learn, to teach them how to read and write, and I also proposed to establish a community school with those that could speak English. Actually, it was only men that could speak English, so I met under a tree only with men in a village where women are not very much listened to. Yet these men were all happy and friendship increased with them. At some point, I said to myself, well, in a place like this where there was a church but there was no priest, there must be a concrete sign of Christianity. And I said, maybe we can place a Madonna, a statue of the Virgin Mary on a hill so that people could go there on a pilgrimage and so that they could experience being part of something great. I told all these local men, and they said, well, we've never thought of something like this, but it seems okay. So we started looking for the place, for the hill where to place and erect the statue. We found a nice place, but we couldn't find a statue of the Virgin Mary anywhere in the north of Nigeria. At some point, somebody said that he had seen a statue of the Virgin Mary in the house of a priest that was born in the village but lived 100 kilometers away. We called him and he gave us the statue. This happened 20 years ago on August the 15th. And now, every year on August the 15th, there is a procession from one village to the other. And a lot of people participate in this procession. People feel that it's part of them. It was a very significant experience for all of us. I also moved to other places where there was no telephone. I had to drive 170 kilometers to find a telephone. On certain occasions, I felt very lonely, and I said to myself, what am I doing here? Why don't I go back? But I always found an answer to these questions. All the villages that responded to my proposals showed me that my hopes were fulfilled and showed me that I really had to stay. That's where I had been called. So whenever I ask myself questions like, why am I here? Why am I staying here? I always found the answer in the people around me. I always tried to keep a live relationship with the people who gave me hopes in Italy. However, it was difficult to keep in touch with them. Sometimes I received traces, and it was like a joy for me because I could be in touch with the situation in Italy. So whenever I went, I always wanted to meet young people and adults. And then some time later, I went to the village where I now live and proposed to a group of young people to institute community schools. Some of these young people had completed high school, others were attending college in a nearby city. We met and sang together, trying to understand what Jesus Christ meant for our lives. That was also a very nice experience. Meanwhile, in Lagos, which is 1,200 kilometers from Kona and Jalingo, where we live, Memoris Domini had arrived from Italy. This was another great sign of hope to me. Well, we became friends twice a year. I went to visit them. Some of them went to see me. We talked on the phone sometimes. This was a great reference point to me. Also, the people working and living with me had to meet those people in Lagos. I said to myself, we exchanged visits. Some Memoris Domini came to me with some guys from Lagos. And the people of the village were moved by the fact that they had driven 1,200 kilometers to visit us. They experienced very strong bonds, and stronger bonds than simply belonging to an ethnic group. Friendship developed between the youth from the south and the north of Nigeria, and this made them feel alive. This went on for some time, and after this, two of these young lads told me, "Sister, we have experienced something nice. We would like to convey the same experience to the children of our village. Why don't we establish a nursery school?" Well, I was surprised by this. I was doing completely different things. I had not even thought about this possibility. I had never been involved in a nursery school. I talked to other people. They were insisting, and I said, why don't we take this challenge? So we started using premises in the parish. We renovated them, and then we started with the enrollments. 77 children came to this nursery school. Then we asked for help from the Memoris Domini. The families are indeed very poor and have to be supported somehow. They don't have the possibility of paying the school fees. So we established the nursery school, and RC helped us very much from a distance. This year we had 192 children. The school has been there for 5 years already, and it's a very important reference point. The village has 4,000 inhabitants, and none of them had been at a nursery school before. Instead, now these children wear their uniforms in the morning and go to school. It's a nice place. With the help of friends from Italy, it was built in a very nice way. You know, the children are used to living in huts where they don't have chairs, there's sand on the floor. Instead, there is glazing in the windows of the school. There are chairs. Everything is so colored. They like it very much. Then we have an opportunity to meet the parents. The parents can ask many questions, and it is a growing experience which will certainly contribute to the life of the village. People in the village now have a desire to educate their youth. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank the Italians who help us from a distance with this school. If we did not have this help, we would have to close the nursery school and the children would have no opportunities. This year, I wanted the parents to become a bit more responsible for education. There is a primary school in the village that was founded by the early Irish missionaries when they came, and then it was taken over by the government, but it doesn't work very well. I told the parents, it's your children that have to go to school. Why don't we try and do something together for this primary school? The answer was not a positive one. I tried to tackle this point and this issue for 1 year, but I did not succeed. At some point, together with some friends, we discovered that the primary school had been there for 60 years. So we decided to create an association of the alumni of this school, of the people that had attended the school before. We have involved the teachers and former teachers, also the headmaster, the principal of the school. We had several meetings with them, and we try and involve them so as to improve the situation of this primary school. We would like them to ask the local government to do something for the school. Then we also organize afternoon courses for children, and we have a good cooperation with the teachers and the principal. Together with the school, the village is also growing. Some of the youth that I had initially met are now teachers at the school. Let me tell you another story. Once a friend paid a visit to us from Cameroon. He traveled 2 days through mountains, rivers, a lot of sand, and reached our village. It was a beautiful experience. The young lads were surprised because this missionary had traveled such a long distance to see them. He talked about faith in a simple way, and these young guys were surprised. One of them told me, "Sister, who's this person?" I said, "Father Joseph." But he continued asking who he was. This means that he had grasped a presence inside this missionary. He said, and I said to myself, it's like the apostles who said, who is this? Who is this person talking about Jesus? The encounter with Christ made flesh can turn one's own life. I spent some months in Italy because I had some health problems. This Father Joseph decided to come to see us another time, but I was not there, so he could not come. But Father Joseph nevertheless decided to go to Jalingo on his own. I called the young guys from Italy and told them that our friends were coming. When our friends arrived to the village, they found 34 young people waiting for them with a board saying meeting 2009. They understood that even if I was not there, they had to do something and receive these visiting friends. It was a source of great joy to me. I will go back there, and I'm certain that it's worth staying there in spite of the difficulties, in spite of all the problems that are found in that country, because there are people who are ready to accept the mystery of Christ made flesh, which still moves the hearts of everybody. Thank you very much.
Certamente pensavo si tratta.
Certainly we have heard exceptional experiences today, but they're not far apart. They're from the same tree that we belong to and that we are grateful to belong to. So we hope that this meeting has, for each of you, and each of us, been a way of opening up our souls and opening up new horizons far away. And hopefully for some of you this will be a beginning of a relationship with them and with Africa, because this meeting was called Our Africa. Africa is part of each and every one of us. But as I said before, there will be a possibility to ask questions of our guests at the Sala Mimosa, which is between B6 and D6. So we'll be able to continue this meeting with a question and answer session in the Sala Mimosa. Thank you, and I hope to meet you.